Revelation 17, verse 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. In the news by Sputnik. Nord Stream 2 AG does not confirm reports of starting bankruptcy proceedings. Published 2 hours ago by Tim Corso. The company, which was supposed to operate the pipeline capable of pumping 55 million cubic meters of gas from Russia to Germany, only fired all of its personnel due to sanctions slapped on it. The project was put on ice by German authorities in response to Russia starting a special operation to demilitarize and Nazify Ukraine. Nord Stream 2 AG has not confirmed reports about it initiating bankruptcy proceedings after several media outlets claimed that the process had started. Quote, the company only informed local authorities about the forced termination of contracts with personnel due to U.S. sanctions imposed on Nord Stream 2 AG, end quote, the firm stated. The report about bankruptcy was initially made by Swiss broadcaster SRF. Switzerland is home to Nord Stream 2 AG's headquarters. The company had 106 employees before it was forced to lay them off due to sanctions. Since the start of Russia's special operation in Ukraine, the German government has announced that the Nord Stream 2 project has been frozen indefinitely while the U.S. slapped sanctions on it. The pipeline was finished last year but never launched. It is capable of pumping 55 million cubic meters of gas from Russia to Germany per year. Commenting on the current state of the project and if it was dead, quote unquote, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov stated that its infrastructure is ready in technological, and logistics terms, and that is not going to change. Peskov noted that common sense and economic feasibility, which means viability, workability, responsibleness, usefulness, suitability, helpfulness, value, clearly indicate the necessity, which means essential requirement, prerequisite, fundamental, essential, needfulness of a speedy launch of the pipeline. Also from the Sputnik, Kremlin on whether Nord Stream 2 is dead. Infrastructure ready to operate. On Monday, Anglo-Dutch petroleum giant Shell has decided to withdraw from joint ventures with Russian gas giant Gazprom, including the termination of its participation in the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline project amid the Russian special operations in Ukraine. On Tuesday, Austrian energy company OMV Group said it will review the involvement in the Nord Stream 2 project. As for the death of this project, the infrastructure is ready, technically, technologically, logistically, and so on. This infrastructure will be in place. It will not go anywhere. Common sense and economic feasibility clearly indicate the need to launch this facility as soon as possible, Peskov told reporters. Currently, hysteria makes it impossible to launch the pipeline. It is difficult to make forecasts now, the spokesman said, but expressed hope that over time a sober assessment of the situation will replace the hysteria. The Nord Stream 2 is a 1,200 kilometer pipeline project under the Baltic Sea. It was completed last September and is designed to double the flow of Russian gas directly to Germany. The new 55 billion cubic meters per year capacity pipeline was expected to double the original Nord Stream capacity to a total of 110 BCM. And here we have an image that shows the Nord Stream pipelines between Germany and Russia under the Baltic Sea. This is extremely important to Europe and Germany. Shalom, all praises, blessings, glories, and honors be unto Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushai Ba'Hashem Racha Kodash. Double honors to my apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who have taught me his truth, as well of men of like mind. Shalom wa chasad, which means peace and mercy to the elect of the nation of Israel, whom are you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and Israelite foreigners of the sea land of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whom are scattered here in America, which is Babylon the Great, and abroad. And to you I say Shalom and Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushai Ratazah. This lesson is edifying, informative, and brief. This lesson will, Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushai Ratazah, be a more in-depth addition to the previous lesson which I done 2 days ago upon this topic. And as we can see here in this image, the Nord Stream pipelines, which connects between Russia and Germany through the Baltic Sea, are in fact essential not only to Germany, but also ultimately to Europe as a whole. As it was stated here by Peskov, common sense and economic feasibility. And again, the word feasibility means achievable, possible, practical, workable. So economic possibilities, economic realizations clearly indicate the need to launch this facility as soon as possible. And why is this facility in such a need of being launched as soon as possible? Why is the Nord Stream gas pipelines so important to not only Germany and Russia, but ultimately to Europe? Well, let's find out. This is from the Hindu.com. Why is it important for Europe and Russia? It is referring to the Nord Stream pipelines. Europe requires more than 100 billion cubic meters BCM of natural gas each year, and around 40% of its gas comes from Russia. This gas is used for heating homes, factories, and offices in the harsh, long European winters, and also for power generation. Over the last few years, Europe has become more dependent on gas imports because of a decrease in domestic gas production. Reducing dependency on Russian gas is difficult, as there are no easy replacements. Hence the reason why sanctions that were slapped upon the Nord Stream 2 facility by the US is detrimental for Europe. And in another article, which Lord's willing I'll read after I've finished touching this particular topic, it'll show why even further. Reading on, it says, over the last few years, Europe, has become more dependent on gas imports because of a decrease in domestic gas production. Reducing dependency on Russian gas is difficult as there are no easy replacements. There is no infrastructure to import LNG from exports like Qatar and the US, and there are question marks over the desirability of shipping gas. The US has said that it is in talks with gas producing countries to secure backup supplies for Europe if Russia stops sending gas. But this does not look like a feasible option in the short term. Feasible meaning possible. In the short term, due to current shortages in global supplies. See how the dots are connecting? See why, or one of the main reasons why the beast and the 10 horns are going to hate the whore, which is America. Moreover, Germany's transition to cleaner fuels by phasing out nuclear power and cutting reliance on coal has increased its dependency on Russian gas, as gas is seen as a cleaner fuel. Many European businesses have large investments in Nord Stream 2, and there is pressure on governments from these businesses, and now they're facing even more additional pressures from sanctions that were imposed by the US upon the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which had caused the immediate firing of contractors. Finally, a reduction in gas from Russia would increase already high gas prices, as we've been seeing, and that would not be popular domestically and globally as well. As for Russia, which has the largest natural gas reserves in the world, around 40% of its budget comes from sales of gas and oil. Nord Stream 2, and this is the key point, is important because it eliminates the risks related with sending gas through transit countries, cuts operating costs by doing away with transit fees, and gives direct access to its most important European Germany. Germany. And not just Germany, but ultimately Europe as a whole. It increases Europe's dependence on Russia while giving it a reliable customer. So these pipelines gives Europe a lot of gas to sustain itself in the most cost-saving and efficient way, because it eliminates. I was gonna say eliminate. Hey man, you gotta have fun sometimes, because it eliminates the risks. My accent related with sending gas through transit countries, because it would then be subject to being sabotaged. Cuts operating costs by doing away with transit fees and gives direct access to its most important European customer, Germany. This is called risk management. Now, the other article that I'll read, Lord willing, is this. So now that we have highlighted the importance of the Nord Stream pipeline, let's now focus on Russia's SWIFT ban and what it means, and why it'll be detrimental to Europe and ultimately the globe. The European Commission is seeking to block 7 Russian banks from SWIFT, with the nation's largest Cyberbank and Gazprom Bank being left off the draft list, writes Bloomberg. The absence of the two banks from the proposal shows the EU is concerned about the consequences of isolating Russia, according to the media outlet. Europe buys energy, grain, and minerals from Russia. These three commodity articles are not the kind that can be easily found as an alternative. Trade with Russia is today an indispensable element of the economic foundation on which the West relies. SWIFT is a system of international payments. Disconnecting Russia from the SWIFT system will mean the actual uh, cessation of trade, says Recap Ersin, a Turkish economic and journalist, commentator and journalist, excuse me. He's on these long ass words, man. SWIFT is an acronym for the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. It's a global payments system which is used by over 11,000 financial institutions and companies around the world across over 200 countries. According to Arsen, the European Commission's decision to sever Russia from SWIFT is tantamount to shooting itself in the foot, since it will mark the beginning of a very serious payment and trade crisis for Europe. The disruption of Russia's grain supplies to Europe will lead to a significant vacuum, notes economic commentator. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Russia and Ukraine combined account for 1/3 of the world's wheat exports and 1/5 of the world's corn. While the U.S. could partially close the gap in Russian natural gas supplies, Washington can't take over Russia's share in grain as well as minerals in the European market, according to Ersin. Europe is planning to reduce trade volumes with Russia, but in doing so, it must ask itself as to who will ensure the security and continuity of supplies, Turkish journalist says. Economies have become intertwined due to globalization, and Russia plays a very important role in this structure. The economic commentator emphasizes, to illustrate this point, Ersin cites the fact that while Turkey accounts for just 1% of all world trade, Turkey's exclusion from the system will create a lot of headaches for European producers over finding raw materials and intermediate goods. For its part, Russia is in the club of the world's largest economies in terms of gross domestic product GDP based on purchasing power parity. And this is the key point. Russia's expulsion from the SWIFT system will mean a very serious payment and trade crisis for Europe, says Ersin. Perhaps initially it will not affect the US and the UK that much, but it will directly affect Germany, France, Italy, the Balkans, and the Baltic countries. Europe is already stifled by high inflation, and it should think twice how it will handle an additional spike in prices. Ultimately, Europe has no scenario under which it can afford not to buy Russian natural gas. Referencing back right to the Nord Stream pipelines, gas pipelines. As the US is gradually losing its dominance, the world's emerging economies are moving towards multipolarity, according to the journalist. After the global financial crisis of 2008, developing economies started diversifying their trade ties more actively. Ersin notes that the global financial system is about to reach a new turning point associated with the formation of a new world order and the impact of the COVID pandemic. Disconnecting Russia from SWIFT will accelerate this process, and the West will shoot the global system it has created in the foot, the economic commentator says. Meanwhile, the Russo-Turkish trade will not be disrupted by Russia's exclusion from SWIFT, Ersin asserts. And Turkey in Ezekiel 38 is referred to as Meshach and Tubal. Under new circumstances, Turkey will purchase hydrocarbons through the Russian payment system. The commentator says Turkey must sign a comprehensive swap agreement with Russia. or volume of trade with Russia is enormous. For example, there is an integrated banking structure between Russia and Turkish banks. If there is no SWIFT system, our economies will be focused on creating their own joint payment systems. This concludes the articles. Lord's willing, they were informative and edifying. So now let's read Revelation chapter 17, verse 16. Again, then we get Obadiah and conclude the lesson. It says, Revelation chapter 17, verse 16, and the 10 horns, which represents the EU, nations in the EU, which thou sawest upon the beast, which represents NATO, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Do what? Intercontinental ballistic missiles. Now let's go to Obadiah 1 and 7. All the men of that confederacy, all of America's allies, all of the countries that have done trade with America, have brought thee even to the border. Joel, the 3rd chapter, tells us what border it is referring to. It is the border of the valley of Jehoshaphat, Yahweh Shaphat in the Hebrew, which means Yahweh's judgment. And that's in the Arabian Peninsula, okay, in the Middle East. The men that were at peace with thee, your allies, the 10 horns and the beast, have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. Why? Because they're going to burn her with fire. They that eat thy bread, and that's what they have been doing and are still doing. But eventually, they're going to turn their backs against America, have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him, because see what Esau is doing, all that he's doing is ultimately to crash the global economy. But in doing so, he's really going to cause his allies in the NATO and the EU to suffer a lot of losses and hurt, because they're going to realize that signing with America was a big mistake in everything that they've been doing so far against Russia, cutting it off from SWIFT, putting sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, because all that stuff is going to have negative effects on Germany and Europe. People are going to start seeing gas prices skyrocket to unprecedented levels, coupled with the bite, the pain of inflation, and then the hyperinflation. And it's not only is it going to affect Europe, but it's also going to affect America too. So these devils, they know what they're doing, and ultimately it's the Lord that's putting it in their minds to, do all these things so that they can speed up, introducing and implementing their New World Order, because ultimately their goal is to crash the current financial system, to roll out their new digital centralized system so that they can utilize the mark of the beast, which is the RFID microchip. So with that, I pray this lesson was edifying and informative. This has been another In the News edition. Until the next Lord's willing, I say shalom to the elect.